The Starship Odyssey hung in high orbit above Earth, its sleek hull gleaming in the sunlight. Captain Aria Novak stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the main view screen. A massive vessel, easily 10 times the size of the Odyssey, loomed before them. Its surface was a mesmerizing swirl of iridescent colors, constantly shifting and changing. "Status report," Aria commanded, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. Lieutenant Commander Rajesh Patel, the ship's science officer, spoke up. "The alien vessel is holding position, Captain. No signs of weapons charging or shields activating. They seem to be waiting." Aria nodded, her mind racing. This was it, humanity's first contact with an advanced alien civilization. Everything they'd worked for, every breakthrough in faster-than-light travel and interstellar communication, had led to this moment. "Open a channel," she ordered. The communications officer, Ensign Zhou Chen, tapped at her console. "Channel open, Captain." Aria took a deep breath. "This is Captain Aria Novak of the Earth Starship Odyssey. We come in peace and friendship. Welcome to our solar system." For a long moment, there was silence. Then, the view screen flickered, and an alien face appeared. It was vaguely humanoid, with large, almond-shaped eyes that glowed with an inner light. Its skin was a pale blue, and instead of hair, a crown of delicate, crystalline structures adorned its head. "Greetings, humans of Earth," the alien spoke, its voice melodious and otherworldly. "I am Ambassador Xylos of the Zelaxian Confederation. We have long observed your world and deemed you ready for first contact." Aria felt a surge of excitement and apprehension. "We are honored, Ambassador Xylos. We have much to learn from each other." Xylos nodded, the crystals on its head chiming softly. "Indeed, we have studied your transmissions and find your species intriguing. Your capacity for innovation is remarkable, yet we sense a darkness within you as well." Aria frowned slightly. "Every species has its flaws, Ambassador, but we strive to be better, to grow and learn." "A commendable goal," Xylos replied. "We would like to invite a delegation from Earth to our ship. There is much to discuss." Aria exchanged glances with her senior staff. This was moving faster than any of their first contact protocols had anticipated, but the opportunity was too great to pass up. "We accept your invitation, Ambassador," Aria said. "Please allow us time to prepare a suitable delegation." Xylos inclined its head. "Of course, we await your arrival." As the transmission ended, the bridge erupted into a flurry of activity. Aria turned to her first officer, Commander Marcus Reeves. "Assemble the team. We need our best and brightest for this." Hours later, Aria found herself leading a small group through the cavernous halls of the Zelaxian ship. The interior was as mesmerizing as the exterior, with walls that seemed to pulse with living light. Beside her walked Dr. Elara Voss, Earth's leading xenobiologist, and Professor Caden Wolf, a brilliant linguist and cultural expert. They were led to a vast chamber that seemed to defy the laws of physics. The floor was transparent, giving the illusion of walking on starlight. In the center stood Ambassador Xylos, surrounded by other Zelaxians. "Welcome aboard the Celestial Harmony," Xylos said, gesturing with a graceful six-fingered hand. "We are pleased to begin this historic dialogue." As they settled into what appeared to be living chairs that molded to their bodies, Aria couldn't shake a feeling of unease. The Zelaxians were cordial, but there was an underlying current of something. Suspicion? Doubt. "We have many questions," Xylos began. "Your species is young, yet you have achieved so much. How is this possible?" Dr. Voss leaned forward, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. "Humans are naturally curious and adaptable. We learn from our mistakes and constantly push boundaries." One of the other Zelaxians, introduced as Scientist Lyra, tilted its head. "Yet your history is filled with conflict and deception. How can we trust a species that so often lies to itself?" Aria felt a chill run down her spine. This was not how she had imagined first contact would go. Every species has its flaws, she repeated her earlier words. But we have grown. Our unity in space exploration is proof of that. Silos and Lyra exchanged looks, a silent communication passing between them. Perhaps, Silos said finally, but we require proof. We have a proposal for you, Captain Novak. A test, if you will, to demonstrate your species' honesty and worth. As Silos outlined the challenge, Aria's mind raced. This was more than just first contact. It was a trial, with the future of human-Zalaxian relations hanging in the balance. And as she looked around at her team, she knew they were thinking the same thing. Whatever this test was, they had to pass it. For the sake of Earth, and for the dream of a united galaxy, they would prove that humans were not the serial liars the Zalaxians feared them to be. The real challenge was just beginning. The tension in the Celestial Harmony's grand chamber was palpable as Ambassador Silos finished outlining the Zalaxians' proposed test. Captain Aria Novak's mind whirled with the implications of what she'd just heard. "Let me get this straight," she said, her voice calm despite her inner turmoil. "You want us to submit to a series of trials designed to test our honesty and moral character?" Phylos nodded, the crystalline structures on its head chiming softly. "Correct, Captain. We have observed your species for some time, and while your achievements are impressive, your history of deception concerns us greatly." Professor Kaiden Wolf, the linguist, leaned forward. "Ambassador, if I may, what you perceive as deception might simply be a cultural misunderstanding. Humans use various forms of non-literal communication, metaphors, sarcasm, even white lies to avoid hurting feelings. These aren't meant to deceive, but to facilitate social harmony." Scientist Lyra's glowing eyes narrowed. "Are you suggesting that falsehoods can be beneficial?" Dr. Ilara Voss jumped in. "In a way, yes. It's a complex aspect of human psychology and social interaction, but it doesn't negate our capacity for honesty in matters of importance." Silos and Lyra exchanged another of their silent, meaningful looks. Aria couldn't shake the feeling that there was more going on here than a simple cultural misunderstanding. "We understand that different species may have different communication norms," Sios said finally. "But surely you can see why a propensity for flexible truth-telling might concern us when considering interstellar relations." Aria nodded slowly. "I do understand your concern, Ambassador, and we're willing to participate in your trials to prove our trustworthiness. But I hope you'll keep an open mind about the nuances of human communication." "Very well," Silos said. "The trials will begin tomorrow. You may return to your ship to prepare. Choose your participants wisely, Captain Novak. The future of human-Zalaxian relations depends on their performance." As they made their way back to the Odyssey, Aria's mind was racing. She gathered her senior staff in the conference room as soon as they were aboard. "Thoughts?" she asked, looking around at the assembled faces. Commander Marcus Reeves spoke first. "It's a trap," he said bluntly. "They've already decided we're untrustworthy. These trials are just a formality." Dr. Voss shook her head. "I don't think so. The Zalaxians seem genuinely curious about us. Yes, they're suspicious, but I believe they're giving us a real chance to prove ourselves." "Either way," Aria said, "we need to approach this carefully. Kaiden, I want you to dig deeper into Zalaxian culture. If they're this focused on honesty, there must be a reason. Ilara, work with him. Try to find any biological or evolutionary factors that might explain their attitude." As her team dispersed to their tasks, Aria found herself standing alone at the viewscreen, staring at the massive Zalaxian ship. The fate of humanity's place in the galactic community rested on their shoulders. They couldn't afford to fail. The next morning, Aria led a small team back to the Celestial Harmony. Besides herself, she had chosen Dr. Voss for her scientific expertise and empathetic nature, Lieutenant Commander Patel for his logical mind and technological skills, and surprisingly, Ensign Chen from communications. "Ensign," Aria had said when she informed the young officer of her selection, "your ability to read between the lines of what's being said and unsaid could be crucial here." Now, as they stood before Axilos and a panel of Zalaxian judges, Aria felt a mix of determination and apprehension. The chamber they were in was smaller than before, more intimate, with a series of strange devices arranged on pedestals around the room. "Welcome, humans," Xylos said. "Are you prepared to begin the trials?" Aria straightened her shoulders. "We are, Ambassador." "Very well. The first trial is simple. Each of you will be asked a series of questions all connected to this device." Xylos gestured to what looked like an ornate headband. "It will measure your physiological responses to determine the truthfulness of your answers." As Ensign Chen was fitted with the device, Aria couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. This was more than just a lie detector test. The Zalaxians were probing into the very nature of human honesty. The questions started innocuously enough: name, age, position on the ship. But they quickly became more personal, more probing. "Have you ever lied to a superior officer?" the Zalaxian interviewer asked. Chen hesitated for a moment. "Yes," she said finally. "Once, I told Captain Novak I had completed a diagnostic when I was still running final checks. I finished it 5 minutes later, and the report was accurate, but technically, I had lied at the moment I said it was done." The Zalaxians murmured among themselves. Aria held her breath, wondering if this admission of a small deception would doom their efforts before they'd truly begun. But the interviewer merely nodded and moved on to the next question. As the interrogation continued, Aria began to see a pattern. The Zalaxians weren't just interested in whether the humans told the truth. They were fascinated by the reasons behind their occasional deceptions. When it was Aria's turn, she found herself explaining concepts like white lies, sarcasm, and even the complex morality of lying to protect someone from harm. The Zalaxians listened with rapt attention, their glowing eyes wide with what seemed like a mix of shock and fascination. As the first trial concluded, Xylos approached Aria. "Your species' relationship with truth is more complex than we had anticipated, Captain Novak. We will need time to analyze these results before proceeding to the next trial." Aria nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope. "Thank you for giving us this chance, Ambassador. I believe that if we continue to communicate openly like this, we can move past this misunderstanding and forge a strong relationship between our peoples." As they were escorted back to their shuttle, Aria couldn't shake the feeling that they had passed some sort of test, but that the real challenges were yet to come. The Zalaxians' obsession with honesty hinted at a deeper story, one that she was determined to uncover. Little did she know that the truth would be more shocking and more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. As the Odyssey's crew awaited the Zalaxians' decision, tension aboard the ship reached a fever pitch. Captain Aria Novak paced the bridge, her mind racing with possibilities and potential outcomes. The future of human-alien relations hung in the balance, and she couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something crucial. "Captain," Ensign Chen's voice broke through Aria's reverie. "We're receiving a transmission from the Celestial Harmony." Aria straightened her uniform. On screen, Ambassador Xylos' ethereal face filled the view screen, its crystalline crown chiming softly. "Captain Novak, we have deliberated on the results of the first trial. Your species' complex relationship with truth is troubling to us. However, we are willing to proceed with the next phase of our evaluation." Aria felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. "Thank you, Ambassador. We're ready for whatever challenge you have prepared." Xylos' expression was unreadable. "The next trial will test not just your honesty, but your problem-solving skills and moral judgment. We have prepared a series of scenarios that your team must navigate. Your decisions and the reasoning behind them will be closely monitored." As Xylos outlined the details, Aria's heart sank. The scenarios were complex ethical dilemmas, each with no clear right answer. How could they prove their trustworthiness when faced with situations where any choice could be seen as a form of deception? "We accept your challenge, Ambassador," Aria said, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. "When do we begin?" "Immediately," Xylos replied. Please report to the Celestial Harmony with your chosen team. As the transmission ended, Arya turned to her senior staff. Dr. Voss, Commander Patel, Ensign Chen, you're with me. The rest of you, stand by for any developments. Once aboard the Zalaxian ship, they were led to a room that seemed to shimmer and shift around them. Holographic projections sprang to life, creating vivid, immersive environments for each scenario. The first challenge plunged them into a diplomatic crisis. They were presented with two warring alien races, each accusing the other of heinous acts. The humans had to negotiate a peace treaty, but it quickly became apparent that both sides were lying about key details. We can't sign off on a treaty based on false information, Arya argued. But if we accuse either side of lying, we could destroy any chance of peace. Dr. Voss stepped forward. What if we don't accuse anyone? Instead, we propose a fact-finding mission, with representatives from both sides and neutral observers. We make it clear that the treaty will be based on verified facts, not accusations. The Zalaxian judges watched intently as the human team worked through the problem, their glowing eyes unblinking. As they moved through more scenarios, ethical dilemmas involving advanced technology, first contact situations with potentially hostile species, even simulated internal conflicts within a starship crew, Arya began to notice a pattern. The Zalaxians seemed less interested in their final decisions and more focused on their decision-making process. During a brief respite between challenges, Commander Patel approached Arya. Captain, I've been analyzing the scenarios. They all have one thing in common. They force us to balance honesty with other moral imperatives. It's as if they're trying to understand how we prioritize truth in relation to other values. Arya nodded slowly. Good observation, Rajesh. But why? What are they really looking for? Before Patel could respond, they were called back for the final scenario. This one was different from the others. They found themselves in a simulated version of Earth, facing a global crisis. A deadly pandemic was sweeping the planet, and they had to decide whether to release information about a potential cure that was still unproven and possibly dangerous. If we announce this prematurely, we could give false hope or even endanger lives, Dr. Voss argued. But if we wait for absolute certainty, more people will die in the meantime. Ensign Chen spoke up. What if we tell the truth, but not all of it? We announce that we're working on a promising treatment, but emphasize the uncertainties and risks. We're not lying, but we're also not causing panic or false hope. As they debated, Arya noticed something strange. The Zalaxian judges were becoming agitated, their crystalline structures vibrating in a way she hadn't seen before. Silos, in particular, seemed deeply affected by their discussion. Finally, Arya made her decision. We tell the truth, the whole truth. We explain the potential of the treatment, but also its risks and uncertainties. We trust in people's ability to handle complex information and make informed decisions. As she spoke, a ripple seemed to pass through the room. The holographic projections flickered and died, leaving them standing in an empty chamber. The Zalaxian judges conferred in hushed tones, their agitation growing. Silos approached, its usual composure shaken. Captain Novak, your team's performance was unexpected. We must confer further before proceeding. Please return to your ship and await our next communication. As they were escorted back to their shuttle, Arya couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. They had passed the Zalaxians' test, but in doing so, they seemed to have triggered something deeper, something that went beyond mere cultural misunderstanding. Back on the Odyssey, as her team dissected their experiences, Arya stared out at the stars. What had they stumbled into? And more importantly, what would the Zalaxians do next? Little did she know that their trials were far from over, and that the true nature of the Zalaxian obsession with truth was about to be revealed in a way that would shake the foundations of both their civilizations. As the hours stretched into days with no word from the Zalaxians, tension aboard the Odyssey reached a breaking point. Captain Arya Novak had just finished another tense briefing with Earth's leaders when a priority alert sounded from the bridge. "Captain to the bridge immediately," Commander Ree's voice crackled over the comm. Arya rushed to her post, her heart pounding. "Report. Ma'am, we're detecting a new ship entering the system," Lieutenant Commander Patel announced, his fingers flying over his console. It's not Zalaxian. In fact, it doesn't match any known configuration in our database." The view screen flickered to life, revealing a sleek vessel that seemed to ripple and shift like liquid metal. It was smaller than the Celestial Harmony, but radiated an aura of advanced technology that made the Odyssey seem primitive by comparison. "Are they transmitting?" Arya asked, her mind racing through potential first contact scenarios. Ensign Chen nodded. "Yes, Captain. They're requesting to speak with you. And they're asking for privacy. They say it's a matter of galactic security." Arya exchanged a glance with Reeves. This was highly irregular, but these were far from normal circumstances. "Route it to my ready room. Commander, you have the bridge." In the privacy of her office, Arya activated her secure terminal. The screen shimmered and a face appeared, distinctly alien, yet with a warmth and expressiveness that immediately set it apart from the Zalaxians. The being had iridescent scales instead of skin, and what looked like gills pulsed gently at its neck. "Greetings, Captain Novak of Earth," the alien said, its voice melodious and soothing. "I am Ambassador Zara of the Nebulon Collective. We've been monitoring your interactions with the Zalaxians, and we believe it's time we intervened." Arya's diplomatic training kicked in, masking her surprise. "It's an honor to meet you, Ambassador Zara. May I ask why you've chosen to contact us now?" Zara's expression grew serious. "Because you and your crew have unknowingly stumbled into a galactic conflict that has been brewing for centuries. The Zalaxians' obsession with truth is not what it seems." Over the next hour, Zara revealed a story that left Arya reeling. The Nebulons and Zalaxians had once been allies, part of a coalition of spacefaring races. But the Zalaxians had developed a technology they claimed could detect and enforce absolute truth, a device they called the Verity Engine. "At first it seemed like a noble pursuit," Zara explained. But the Zalaxians became fanatical. They began to see nuance and context as threats. They couldn't understand that sometimes compassion and social harmony require a gentler approach to truth. The Nebulons and other races had objected to the widespread use of the Verity Engine, arguing that it violated personal freedom and cultural diversity. The disagreement had led to a schism in the galactic community. The Zalaxians withdrew from the coalition, Zara continued. They spent centuries perfecting their technology, believing that only through absolute, unfiltered truth can a civilization truly advance. And now they set their sights on Earth. Arya felt a chill run down her spine. The trials, they weren't just about cultural understanding, were they? Zara nodded grimly. They were calibrating their Verity Engine to human physiology and psychology. If they succeed, they'd plan to gift this technology to Earth, believing they're elevating your species. But in reality, they'd be stripping us of a fundamental aspect of our humanity. Arya finished, her mind reeling with the implications. "Precisely," Zara said. "Captain Novak, we're here to offer our help. The Nebulon Collective believes in the right of each species to develop on its own path. We've been working on a way to neutralize the Verity Engine, but we need your help." Arya leaned back in her chair, her thoughts racing. This was far beyond anything she'd been trained for. The fate of not just Earth, but potentially the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. "What do you need from us?" she asked finally. Zara's expression was a mix of relief and determination. "We need access to the Celestial Harmony. Our intelligence suggests that the core of the Verity Engine is housed there. With your help, we can infiltrate the ship and disable it." It was a risky plan, fraught with potential for diplomatic disaster. But as Arya thought about the Zalaxians' trials, their probing questions, and their inability to grasp the complexities of human communication, she realized they had little choice. All right, she said, straightening in her chair. Let's do this, but we do it my way. No deception, no subterfuge. We go to the Zalaxians openly and make our case. If they're truly committed to truth, they'll have to listen. Zara looked surprised, then thoughtful. A bold strategy, Captain. It just might work. Very well, we'll follow your lead. As the transmission ended, Arya took a deep breath. She had just committed Earth to a course of action that could either secure its place in the galactic community or lead to interstellar conflict. She tapped her comm badge. Senior staff to the conference room. We have a situation. As her team assembled, Arya steeled herself for the conversation ahead. They were about to challenge an alien superpower on behalf of a species they just met, all in the name of preserving humanity's right to little white lies and social niceties. It was either the bravest or the most foolish thing she'd ever done. Only time would tell which. The Odyssey hung in space, dwarfed by the looming presence of the celestial harmony. On the bridge, Captain Arya Novak stood tall, her jaw set with determination. Beside her, Ambassador Zara of the Nebulon Collective shimmered slightly, their iridescent scales catching the starlight. "Hail the Zalaxian ship," Arya commanded, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. The viewscreen flickered to life, revealing Ambassador Xylos. The Zalaxian's crystalline crown seemed to pulse with an inner light, betraying a tension that hadn't been there before. "Captain Novak," Xylos said, its melodious voice tinged with surprise. "We were not expecting further communication until..." It stopped abruptly, noticing Zara. "A Nebulon. What is the meaning of this?" Arya stepped forward. "Ambassador Xylos, we've come to discuss the true nature of your trials and the technology you call the Verity Engine." A ripple seemed to pass through Xylos's form. "How do you know of this?" "The Nebulons," it hissed, crystals chiming discordantly. "They have poisoned you against us with their lies." "No lies, Ambassador," Zara said smoothly. "Only truths you've chosen to ignore." What followed was a tense negotiation. Arya laid out everything they had learned about the Verity Engine and the Zalaxians' plans for Earth. She appealed to their dedication to truth, arguing that true understanding between species required accepting differences, not enforcing uniformity. Xylos listened, its expression unreadable. Finally, it spoke. "Your words are compelling, Captain. Perhaps we have been overzealous in our pursuit of absolute truth. We will allow a delegation from your ship and the Nebulons to inspect the Verity Engine, in the spirit of full disclosure." As they prepared to board the Celestial Harmony, Arya couldn't shake a feeling of unease. It had been too easy. The Zalaxians, so stubborn before, had acquiesced too quickly. Her suspicions were confirmed the moment they stepped onto the alien ship. They were met not by Xylos, but by a contingent of Zalaxian security forces, their crystalline armor glinting menacingly. "I'm afraid we cannot allow you to interfere with our great work," Xylos's voice echoed through the chamber. "The Verity Engine is too important. Your species will thank us in time." Arya's hand went to her phaser, but before she could draw it, a wave of energy washed over them. The world swam before her eyes, and she felt her consciousness slipping away. She awoke in a sterile white room, her head pounding. Dr. Voss and Commander Purtol were there, along with Zara, all looking as disoriented as she felt. "The Zalaxians have imprisoned us," Zara said grimly. "They're preparing to activate the Verity Engine on a planetary scale. If they succeed, Earth will be forever changed." Arya's mind raced. They had to stop this, but how? They were trapped, outgunned, and out of options. Or were they? A plan began to form in her mind. A desperate, dangerous plan that went against everything she believed in as a Starfleet officer. But desperate times called for desperate measures. "Ambassador Zara," she said slowly, "you said the Verity Engine was calibrated to human physiology and psychology. What about Nebulon?" Zara's eyes widened in understanding. "It wouldn't work on us, not without significant modifications. But surely you're not suggesting..." Arya nodded grimly. The greatest deception of all. We're going to lie our way out of here, and we're going to use the truth to do it. Over the next few hours, they put their plan into action. Using the Nebulon's natural resistance to the Verity engine, they crafted a series of careful half-truths and misdirections. They played on the Zalaxians' obsession with honesty, using their own rigid thinking against them. Through a combination of Zara's alien biology and the humans' complex relationship with truth, they managed to convince their guards that the Verity engine was malfunctioning, that it was giving false readings. As alarms blared and confusion spread through the celestial harmony, Arya and her team made their move. They fought their way to the heart of the ship, where the Verity engine pulsed with otherworldly energy. Standing before the massive machine, Arya felt the weight of her next decision. Destroying it would set back Zalaxian technology by centuries. It might be seen as an act of war, but allowing it to remain was not an option. "Captain," Patel said urgently, "I've accessed the engine's controls. But there's a failsafe. Someone has to stay behind to initiate the overload sequence." Arya straightened her shoulders. "I'll do it. The rest of you get back to the Odyssey." But before she could move, Zara placed a webbed hand on her arm. "No, Captain, this is my responsibility. My people helped create this situation by not acting sooner. Let me make it right." As alarms blared and footsteps thundered in the corridors, Arya made her choice. It was a choice that would have repercussions across the galaxy, a choice that balanced truth and deception, duty and morality. In that moment, as the Verity engine began to overload and the celestial harmony shuddered around them, Arya Novak realized that sometimes the greatest truths could only be spoken through lies, and that the most honest act could be deception in service of a greater good. The fate of Earth, and perhaps the galaxy, hung in the balance, and as she raced back to her ship, leaving Zara behind, Arya knew that the real challenge was only just beginning. The Odyssey shuddered as it pulled away from the celestial harmony, the massive Zalaxian ship, now a chaos of flashing lights and venting atmosphere. Captain Arya Novak gripped her command chair, her knuckles white, as she watched the unfolding drama on the viewscreen. "Status report," she barked, her eyes never leaving the screen. Lieutenant Commander Petel's fingers danced over his console. "The Verity engine is going critical, Captain. Energy readings are off the charts. We need to put some distance between us and..." His words were cut off by a blinding flash. The celestial harmony seemed to implode, collapsing in on itself before exploding outward in a dazzling array of light and color. The shockwave hit the Odyssey like a physical blow, sending crew members sprawling. "Damage report," Arya called out as soon as she could hear herself think again. "Shields holding at 60%, minor damage to outer hull plating," came the response. "No casualties reported." Arya allowed herself a moment of relief before the gravity of the situation crashed back down on her. They had just destroyed a ship belonging to an advanced alien race. The diplomatic ramifications alone were staggering. "Captain," Ensign Chen's voice was tense. "We're being hailed by the Zalaxian home world." Arya took a deep breath. This was it. On screen. The face that appeared was not what she expected. Instead of the crystalline features of Silos or another Zalaxian leader, she saw a being that looked remarkably human. Its skin had a faint blue tinge, and its eyes held a depth of wisdom that spoke of centuries, but the resemblance was uncanny. "Greetings, Captain Novak," the being said, its voice rich and resonant. "I am High Chancellor Zephyr of the Zalaxian Confederation. We have much to discuss." Over the next hour, Arya learned the truth behind the Zalaxians' obsession with honesty. Centuries ago, their species had nearly destroyed itself through lies and manipulation. The Verity engine had been created as a desperate attempt to save their civilization. "But in our zeal to eradicate deception," Zephyr explained, "we lost something essential. The ability to understand context, to grasp the complex interplay between truth and compassion." The The destruction of the celestial harmony and the Verity engine had forced the Zelaxian leadership to confront the flaws in their philosophy. Zephyr and a growing faction had been pushing for reform, but had been stymied by hardliners like Kazaios. "Your actions, while drastic, may have saved both our civilizations," Zephyr said. "We owe you a debt of gratitude." Arya felt a weight lift from her shoulders. "Thank you, High Chancellor, but the credit doesn't belong to us alone. The Nebulans." She stopped short, suddenly remembering. Ambassador Zara. They stayed behind to overload the engine. "Are they?" A small smile played at the corners of Zephyr's mouth. "See for yourself, Captain." The view screen split, and there was Zara, looking battered but very much alive. "Hello, Captain. It seems reports of my demise were greatly exaggerated." Arya couldn't help but laugh, relief washing over her. "How?" "The Zelaxians teleported me out at the last moment," Zara explained. "It seems not all of them were as inflexible as we believed." Over the next few days, a flurry of diplomatic activity ensued. Representatives from Earth, the Zelaxian Confederation, and the Nebulon Collective met to hash out a new galactic accord. The principles of honesty and truth remained central, but now tempered with an understanding of nuance and cultural difference. As Arya watched the proceedings, she reflected on the journey that had brought them here. They had faced trials, made difficult choices, and even engaged in the very deception they sought to prevent. But through it all, a greater truth had emerged. "You seem deep in thought, Captain," a voice said beside her. It was Dr. Voss, a datapad in hand. Arya smiled, just thinking about truth, lies, and the grey area in between. Voss nodded thoughtfully. "You know, in all our studies of alien life, we never considered that the greatest challenge to interspecies understanding might be something as simple as how we perceive truth. And yet," Arya mused, "it's that very complexity that makes us who we are. Human, Zelaxian, Nebulon. We're all trying to navigate the same murky waters of morality and communication." As they watched the delegates file into another session, Arya felt a sense of hope she hadn't experienced since this whole ordeal began. They had proven that humans were not serial liars, but rather complex beings capable of great honesty and necessary nuance. The future of galactic relations was uncertain, but one thing was clear: the truth, in all its complicated glory, had prevailed. "Well, Doctor," Arya said, straightening her uniform, "shall we go make some history?" As they walked into the conference room, ready to help shape the future of interstellar cooperation, Arya couldn't help but smile. In the end, it wasn't perfect honesty or clever deception that had saved the day. It was understanding, compassion, and the willingness to see truth from another's perspective. And that, she realized, was the most human truth of all.